Imagine a bank where your deposits never lose value, where your faith multiplies every gift you give, and where the riches are limitless. A place not bound by earthly rules, where every prayer, every act of obedience, and every seed sown with belief is recorded and multiplied. This is the bank of heaven, and it's waiting for you to make a withdrawal. Today, you will learn how to step boldly in faith, activate the resources already stored for you, and unlock blessings beyond imagination. Your miracle is already waiting. It only requires one thing: your faith in action. The bank of heaven is not something that can be seen with human eyes, yet it is as real and as powerful as the air we breathe. It is a divine institution established by God Himself to provide for those who place their trust in Him. Unlike earthly banks, which depend on the economy, market fluctuations, interest rates, or the skill of human managers, the Bank of Heaven operates on a supernatural principle, one that transcends all human understanding. Its currency is faith, its deposits are obedience, and its interest is supernatural abundance that exceeds all expectations. Every believer has access to this bank, yet so many remain unaware of the riches that have already been set aside for them. They live their lives struggling to make ends meet, counting pennies, worrying about debts, and wondering if they will ever experience financial freedom or personal breakthrough. But the truth is, the Bank of Heaven has already recorded their deposits, has already multiplied them, and is ready to release them to those who understand how to withdraw with faith. It is not limited by earthly laws, by scarcity, or by the circumstances that surround us. Its treasures are infinite, waiting to be claimed by those who believe. The deposits we make in the Bank of Heaven are not measured in earthly money, but in acts of faith. Every prayer uttered with sincerity, every offering given with a willing heart, every act of obedience, every time we step out in trust despite uncertainty, all these become deposits that the bank records. These deposits are not just stored, they are multiplied according to the law of the Spirit. One small seed sown in faith has the potential to yield 100-fold, 1,000-fold, or even more, because the principle of heavenly multiplication defies human logic. It does not matter how small our resources may seem. When placed in the hands of the divine, they have the capacity to produce results far beyond what we could ever imagine. The Bank of Heaven recognizes the heart and the intention behind each deposit. It is not the size of the gift or the action that matters, but the faith that accompanies it. The sincerity of our trust, the willingness to obey, and the courage to step out despite fear are what determine the strength of our deposits and the power of the returns. Many people live as though they are limited by their circumstances, unaware that the Bank of Heaven has already made provision for them. They focus on what they do not have, on what they cannot see, and on the obstacles that lie before them. They are blind to the invisible account that grows daily, patiently waiting for their faith to activate its release. The bank is ever present, ever faithful, and ever ready to respond to those who approach it with trust. Unlike earthly banks, there are no fees, no hidden charges, no risk of loss due to human error or natural disaster. Every deposit remains secure and gains interest according to the principles of the Spirit. It is a perfect system, designed to bless and to empower those who are willing to participate in it fully. Understanding the existence of this bank changes everything. It shifts our focus from scarcity to abundance, from worry to trust, from fear to courage. It allows us to see every challenge as an opportunity to make a spiritual deposit, every act of obedience as a step towards supernatural provision, and every moment of faith as a building block for eternal rewards. Those who recognize the Bank of Heaven do not measure their success by what is seen in the natural realm, but by what is growing invisibly in the spiritual. They learn to trust the unseen, to walk by faith rather than by sight, and to rely on the infinite resources that are at their disposal. The bank of heaven is not bound by time or space. What is deposited today can be released tomorrow or years from now, yet its power never diminishes. It grows silently, steadily, and surely, awaiting the moment when faith calls forth a withdrawal. Faith is the key that unlocks this treasure. Without faith, the riches of the bank of heaven remain dormant, inaccessible, and unseen. But with faith, the believer can tap into limitless provision, seeing miracles manifest where there seemed to be impossibility. The bank of heaven exists for every believer, for every heart willing to trust, for every person who dares to step into the supernatural, knowing that God is faithful to reward those who seek Him. It is a divine reality that surpasses all human understanding, a source of unending abundance, and a refuge for those who believe in the power of faith and obedience. Every act of faith is a deposit into the bank of heaven, and each one carries the potential to produce extraordinary returns. It is not enough to simply know that the bank exists. We must actively participate in it through intentional, consistent, and wholehearted acts of faith. Prayer, giving, obedience, and acts of love are not just good deeds. They are spiritual investments. When we give with a willing heart, when we obey even when it seems difficult, and when we trust God in situations that seem impossible, we are planting seeds in the spiritual realm. Each of these seeds is recorded, nurtured, and multiplied beyond our understanding. Some may appear small or insignificant in the natural, but in the eyes of the divine, they are powerful instruments of provision. The principle is simple. What you sow in faith, you will eventually reap in abundance. The bank of heaven recognizes faith as the currency that moves miracles, and it rewards those who are faithful with returns that exceed human expectation. Prayer is one of the most vital deposits we can make. It is not a casual request or a hurried conversation. It is a deliberate act of faith. When we pray with confidence and expectation, we are submitting our needs, our desires, and our intentions to the divine account. Each prayer, uttered in belief and perseverance, is a deposit that the bank of heaven records. But prayer alone is not enough. It must be coupled with trust and action. To pray without acting in faith is to hold back a portion of what God has intended to release. Faith is active, not passive. It is the step we take when we cannot see the entire path, the decision we make when circumstances suggest impossibility, and the confidence we hold when fear whispers otherwise. Every time we step out in faith, we are making a deposit that has the power to multiply in ways that surpass our imagination. Giving is another way to deposit into the bank of heaven. When we give generously, whether it be our time, resources, or talents, we are declaring that we trust God to supply our needs. Giving is not measured by the size of the gift, but by the faith behind it. Even the smallest contribution, given with a willing and cheerful heart, can become the seed of a miraculous harvest. The principle is simple. God multiplies what we entrust to Him. When we give faithfully, we are investing in eternal abundance, and the bank of heaven rewards that faith with supernatural provision. Each deposit through giving, no matter how small, carries interest in the form of blessings that cannot be quantified in human terms. It is the law of the Spirit, a principle that ensures those who trust in God are never left wanting. Obedience is also a crucial deposit. When we obey God's instructions, even when we do not fully understand them, we demonstrate a level of faith that the bank of heaven cannot ignore. Obedience shows trust, and trust activates the power of the spiritual economy. Every act of obedience, every step taken in alignment with God's will, strengthens our account and positions us for a future withdrawal. Often, the instructions of faith may seem challenging or inconvenient, yet it is precisely these acts that yield the greatest returns. The Bank of Heaven operates on principles that are not always visible to the natural eye, yet the results are undeniable. Each moment of obedience, recorded faithfully, grows in power until it is released in the form of blessings, breakthroughs, and miracles. Consistency in these deposits is key. Faith works best when it is persistent and unwavering. Small, repeated acts of faith build momentum in the spiritual realm, creating a compounding effect that produces extraordinary results. The Bank of Heaven does not operate on human schedules, yet it honors consistency. Every prayer, every act of giving, every step of obedience accumulates and strengthens the spiritual balance of our account. Even when there is no immediate visible return, we can trust that each deposit is active, multiplying, and preparing the way for a powerful withdrawal. Patience and persistence in faith are essential because the timing of divine provision is perfect. It is not dictated by our sense of urgency, but by the perfect wisdom of the Bank of Heaven, which knows when our faith is ready to yield its full reward. Acts of faith do not just bring material provision, they bring transformation. Each deposit enriches our spiritual life, strengthens our character, and aligns us with God's purpose. The Bank of Heaven is not limited to finances. It provides for every area of our lives: health, relationships, guidance, opportunities, and peace. By sowing faith consistently, we open ourselves to the unlimited potential of divine provision, ensuring that every need is met and every promise fulfilled according to God's wisdom and timing. Faith deposits are therefore both practical and eternal, impacting the present and shaping the future in ways that surpass human understanding. Faith is the withdrawal slip from the Bank of Heaven, the key that unlocks the treasures that have been deposited through prayer, obedience, and giving. Without faith, all the deposits we have made remain stored, dormant, and unseen. Faith is not merely believing that something might happen. It is a confident expectation that what has been promised will come to pass. It is a bold step into the unseen, a declaration that we trust the Bank of Heaven to release what we need, exactly when we need it. Faith is the vehicle through which the spiritual economy operates, transforming invisible deposits into visible results. When we understand that our faith activates the supernatural, we begin to see that miracles are not random occurrences, but responses to consistent, intentional trust in God. Every time we step out in faith, we are effectively submitting a withdrawal request from the Bank of Heaven, signaling that we are ready to receive the blessings that have already been stored on our behalf. Faith requires action. It is not passive or theoretical. It moves us to speak words that align with God's promises, to make decisions that reflect trust rather than fear, and to take steps that defy the limitations of our natural circumstances. When we act in faith, we communicate to the spiritual realm that we are serious about receiving what has been deposited for us. The Bank of Heaven responds to faith because faith demonstrates confidence in the divine system. It shows that we believe in the abundance of God's provision, even when the natural world suggests scarcity. Faith withdraws what we need not by human effort, but by spiritual authority and alignment with God's will. It is the expression of trust that allows us to step into the fullness of what has already been promised. Many believers struggle to access the blessings of the Bank of Heaven because their faith is weak or inconsistent. They may pray occasionally or give when convenient, but their trust wavers when results are not immediate. Faith is strengthened through persistence, repetition, and expectation. Just as a bank requires consistent deposits to build a substantial account balance, the Bank of Heaven responds to those who consistently act in faith. Each confident step, each spoken word of belief, each decision to obey, increases the spiritual balance available for withdrawal. When faith is exercised regularly, it becomes a habit, a natural posture of the heart that aligns with the principles of the spiritual economy. The stronger our faith, the larger our withdrawal can be, and the more abundant the blessings that flow into our lives. Speaking with faith is one of the most practical ways to make a withdrawal. Words are powerful instruments in the spiritual realm. They have the ability to release provision, protection, and opportunity. When we declare the promises of God over our lives, we are not merely expressing hope. We are activating our spiritual account. Confident words of faith are the mechanism by which deposits are transformed into tangible outcomes. They declare our trust in the bank of heaven and signal readiness to receive. Those who master the art of speaking with faith find that their withdrawals are often immediate, manifesting in ways that exceed human understanding. Faith also requires patience. Withdrawals from the bank of heaven are not always instant. Sometimes the timing of the release is delayed, not because God is unwilling, but because our faith must reach a level that matches the promise. The principle of faith withdrawal is not about urgency, it is about alignment. We must maintain confidence and continue to act according to the law of the Spirit, knowing that every deposit we have made is secure and growing in power. The unseen work of faith prepares the way for a miraculous release, ensuring that when the time comes, the blessing will be complete, abundant, and perfectly timed. Another critical aspect of making a faith withdrawal is trust. Trust in the bank of heaven means believing that what has been promised will come to pass, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It means resisting doubt, fear, and the temptation to rely solely on human methods. Trust is the assurance that allows faith to function fully. Without trust, faith falters and withdrawals remain blocked. With trust, every deposit made through obedience, prayer, and giving can be accessed with confidence, bringing not only material provision, but also spiritual growth, peace, and transformation. Faith empowers us to move from limitation to abundance, from lack to provision, and from despair to hope. By using faith as our withdrawal slip, we access what is already ours, releasing the supernatural power of God into our everyday lives. Each act of faith is a key, each confident word a signature, and each step of obedience a confirmation that we are ready to receive, unlocking the fullness of the bank of heaven in ways that transform our reality in every area. Consistency and obedience are the foundations upon which the power of the bank of heaven operates. Faith is vital, but without consistency, the spiritual account remains underutilized, and without obedience, the deposits lose their full potential. Every act of faith, every prayer, every word spoken in belief, and every gift given becomes powerful only when it is part of a continual pattern of trust and action. The spiritual economy is not a one-time event. It is a process, a journey in which repeated actions build momentum and multiply the power of each deposit. Those who understand this principle do not become discouraged when results are delayed, for they know that consistent, obedient faith produces a compounding effect that grows silently and steadily in the spiritual realm, awaiting the right time for release. Obedience is the demonstration of trust. When we follow divine guidance, even when it is challenging or unclear, we signal to the bank of heaven that we are serious about our commitment. Every act of obedience, no matter how small, strengthens our account and positions us for future withdrawals. Obedience is not only about performing religious duties. It is about aligning our actions with the principles of faith, giving, and spiritual responsibility. When we consistently obey the instructions of the Spirit, we create a rhythm of faith that amplifies our spiritual deposits, ensuring that the blessings we have sown are ready to manifest when called forth by our faith. Consistency in faith requires discipline. It demands that we do not act only when circumstances are favorable or when we feel inspired. True faith acts regardless of the situation, persisting even when we see no immediate results. Each prayer spoken with expectation, each act of generosity, Each step of obedience contributes to a growing balance in the spiritual account, accumulating strength over time. Like compound interest in a financial bank, the effect of consistent faith grows exponentially, producing returns that are far greater than the sum of individual actions. The Bank of Heaven honors consistency because it reflects commitment, trust, and understanding of divine principles, and it rewards those who persevere with abundance and supernatural provision. Obedience and consistency also build character and refine the spirit. Each time we act in alignment with divine principles, we are strengthened in our ability to trust, to remain patient, and to walk with confidence in the unseen. The process of consistent faith challenges us to rise above fear, doubt, and impatience. It teaches us that true provision is not always immediate, and that the spiritual harvest often requires waiting, nurturing, and continued trust. The discipline of obedience and the persistence of consistency transform not only our circumstances, but also our inner lives, equipping us to handle the blessings of the Bank of Heaven with wisdom and gratitude. Consistency also creates expectation. When we repeatedly act in faith and obedience, we begin to anticipate the release of the blessings we have deposited. This expectation is not wishful thinking, but a confident assurance that what has been sown in faith will be returned in full measure. Expectation aligns our hearts and minds with the spiritual reality, preparing us to receive the withdrawal with gratitude and joy. Those who approach the Bank of Heaven with this attitude find that miracles, provision, and opportunities begin to flow more freely because they are operating in alignment with the divine law of consistency. Obedience ensures that our actions are in harmony with God's will. Faith without obedience is incomplete. It is like attempting to withdraw from an account without the proper signature. The Bank of Heaven requires alignment with divine principles for withdrawals to occur. Every instruction followed, every act of service performed, every seed sown with the right heart strengthens the connection between our faith and the provision that is ready to be released. Consistency and obedience work together to ensure that the deposits we make do not remain idle, but are activated and multiplied according to God's timing and wisdom. Even small acts of consistent faith carry tremendous power. A single prayer, a modest gift, a quiet act of obedience may seem insignificant in the natural, yet in the spiritual realm, their impact grows exponentially when repeated faithfully. These small, faithful actions compound over time, creating a balance in the Bank of Heaven that is rich with potential. The accumulation of these acts, when exercised with persistence, positions us to receive not only what is needed in the present, but also blessings that surpass our imagination. Consistency and obedience are therefore not optional, but essential for those who desire to access the full potential of the Bank of Heaven and experience the supernatural provision that awaits those who trust fully. The principle of limitless provision in the Bank of Heaven is one of the most liberating truths for those who live by faith. Many people are trapped in the mindset of scarcity, believing that resources are finite, opportunities are limited, and blessings must be earned through human effort alone. Yet the Bank of Heaven operates on an entirely different principle. It is not constrained by the economy, by human error, or by the limitations of time and space. Its riches are infinite, and its capacity to supply every need is beyond comprehension. Every deposit made in faith, through prayer, giving, or obedience, is multiplied without limit, stored securely, and ready for withdrawal according to the believer's faith. This principle is not theoretical. It is a reality that can transform every area of life, including finances, health, relationships, career, and personal peace. The moment a believer grasps the concept of limitless provision, they begin to operate with confidence rather than fear, with hope rather than anxiety, and with expectation rather than doubt. The Bank of Heaven teaches us that earthly limitations do not define our potential. Human circumstances may suggest shortage, and natural observation may indicate impossibility, but the spiritual economy operates on principles that transcend the visible world. When we deposit faith into the bank, the return is not limited by human calculations or natural constraints. A single act of obedience or a prayer spoken with genuine faith can open the door to blessings far greater than we can imagine. The multiplication of spiritual deposits does not follow earthly rules. It follows the law of the Spirit, where abundance flows according to God's wisdom, not according to human understanding. This truth gives freedom to those who feel trapped by circumstance, fear, or lack. Knowing that the bank of heaven is limitless allows believers to act boldly, to give generously, and to trust with confidence that their needs are already accounted for. Faith withdrawals from the bank of heaven require a deep understanding of this limitless nature. Many believers limit themselves by thinking too small, by seeking only what seems reasonable or achievable in the natural. Yet the bank of heaven encourages boldness, audacity, and expectation. When we approach it with confidence, trusting that there is more than enough for every need, we unlock possibilities that exceed human imagination. The deposits we have made, even if they seem minor in comparison to our desires, carry the potential for exponential growth because the bank multiplies them according to divine law, not human logic. Limitation exists only in the human mind. In the spiritual realm, provision is infinite, waiting for faith to access it. This limitless provision is also a reflection of God's character. The bank of heaven is designed to demonstrate His abundance, mercy, and generosity. Every act of giving, every prayer, every step of obedience is recognized and rewarded, not on the basis of scarcity, but on the principle of divine multiplication. It is a system that ensures no faithful believer is ever left wanting. Even when human resources are depleted, when circumstances appear hopeless, and when the natural outlook is bleak, the bank of heaven remains full, overflowing with supernatural potential. It is a reminder that true security and provision are not found in earthly banks or human accumulation, but in the spiritual realm, where God's abundance knows no boundaries. Understanding the limitless nature of heavenly provision also changes the way we live. It encourages generosity, because when we realize there is an inexhaustible supply, we give without fear. It fosters confidence, because we know that no need is too great to be met. It promotes persistence, because we understand that every deposit grows in power over time. And it nurtures peace, because we recognize that God's resources are always available, perfectly timed, and fully sufficient. Believers who operate with this mindset begin to see the world differently. Scarcity is replaced by abundance, worry is replaced by trust, and limitation is replaced by expectation. The principle of limitless provision also encourages believers to act boldly in faith. When the bank of heaven is understood as infinite, there is no need to hold back, no reason to doubt, and no justification for fear. Faith withdrawals are made with confidence, knowing that the deposits have been multiplied and stored for such a time as this. Believers learn to expect miracles, to trust in unseen forces, and to act decisively because the spiritual economy is not restricted by natural laws. Each step taken in faith opens new channels of blessing, demonstrating that the bank of heaven is abundant, generous, and limitless in every sense. Bold confidence is the final key that allows believers to access the full blessings of the bank of heaven. Faith deposits and consistent obedience create the balance, but it is bold, unwavering trust that activates the withdrawal. Many believers struggle to claim what has already been provided because they approach the bank of heaven timidly, uncertainly, or with hesitation. They hesitate to speak promises over their lives, to step out in action, or to expect abundance because they doubt their worthiness or fear failure. Bold confidence is the antidote to hesitation, the force that releases the power stored in the spiritual account. It is not arrogance, but a firm assurance that God's promises are true, that His provision is sufficient, and that the blessings of the bank of heaven are available to those who act decisively in faith. When a believer approaches the divine bank with confidence, every step, every word, and every action becomes a withdrawal slip, signaling readiness to receive. Confidence in faith is rooted in understanding and knowledge of divine principles. Those who know that every deposit they have made, through prayer, giving, obedience, and acts of service, has been recorded and multiplied, do not act in fear. They know that what belongs to them is secure and waiting to be accessed. Bold confidence is built on this assurance, on the certainty that God's timing is perfect and that His wisdom governs the release of every blessing. It allows believers to act without hesitation, to speak without fear, and to expect without doubt. Bold confidence transforms the believer from one who waits passively into one who walks actively in alignment with divine provision, ensuring that blessings flow unhindered from the spiritual realm into the natural. Many fail to receive because they approach faith withdrawals timidly. They pray quietly, give cautiously, and act reluctantly, often waiting until conditions are perfect or until the obstacles have disappeared. Yet the bank of heaven responds to boldness, to expectation, and to unwavering trust. Bold confidence signals to the spiritual realm that the believer is ready to receive, fully expecting the fulfillment of what has been sown. It is this confidence that moves faith from potential to manifestation, turning deposits into tangible blessings. Without confidence, faith may exist, but it remains inactive, and withdrawals are delayed or diminished. Boldness is the key that bridges the gap between heavenly provision and earthly experience. Confidence is expressed through action and declaration. Speaking with authority over your life, declaring the promises of God, and acting in obedience even when the natural circumstances suggest otherwise are all demonstrations of bold confidence. Every spoken word of faith, every decisive action, and every step taken with trust signals to the bank of heaven that the believer is prepared to receive. Bold confidence does not demand perfection or require the absence of fear. It simply requires trust in the integrity of God's promises and a willingness to act in alignment with them. The more boldly a believer approaches the spiritual bank, the more fully they can access the blessings stored within. Bold confidence also inspires persistence. Those who approach the bank of heaven with unwavering trust are not discouraged by delays or setbacks. They understand that timing in the spiritual realm may differ from human expectations, and that each challenge is an opportunity to strengthen faith. Persistence, fueled by confidence, ensures that deposits continue to grow and that withdrawals, when they occur, are complete and abundant. Confidence allows believers to navigate obstacles with assurance, knowing that the bank of heaven is limitless and that every deposit they have made is secure and multiplied. The transformative power of bold confidence extends beyond material provision. It impacts relationships, health, career, and spiritual growth. A confident believer approaches life without fear, acts without hesitation, and speaks without doubt. This boldness attracts opportunities, aligns circumstances with divine favor, and positions the believer to receive miracles that surpass human understanding. Confidence strengthens faith, amplifies obedience, and magnifies the effect of every deposit made in the spiritual bank. The principle is simple: the bolder the faith, the greater the withdrawal. Bold confidence ensures that the riches of the bank of heaven are not just theoretical, but fully accessible, tangible, and transformative. Bold confidence is ultimately an expression of trust in God's provision. It demonstrates a complete reliance on His wisdom, timing, and power. Those who possess this confidence understand that nothing can limit the blessings already prepared for them. Each prayer, each act of giving, each step of obedience becomes a conduit through which abundance flows, and bold confidence is the force that opens the door. It allows believers to move from hesitation to action, from expectation to fulfillment, and from potential to manifestation, ensuring that the resources of the bank of heaven are fully released into their lives. Imagine a bank where your deposits never lose value, where your faith multiplies every gift you give, and where the riches are limitless. A place not bound by earthly rules, where every prayer, every act of obedience, and every seed sown with belief is recorded and multiplied. This is the bank of heaven, and it's waiting for you to make a withdrawal. Today, you will learn how to step boldly in faith, activate the resources already stored for you, and unlock blessings beyond imagination. Your miracle is already waiting. It only requires one thing: your faith in action.